Sindh Through Centuries, which brings together fascinating ideas and academic exchanges on modern-day Sindh as a cultural, geographical, and a historical space, and indeed a place that has both created and perhaps uncreated civilizations and provided critical crossroads and routes in historical trajectories of empire building, of religious movements and conquests, connecting South Asia to the rest of the world. The conference is particularly enriching because it involves a multidisciplinary approach to knowledge and brings together eminent archaeologists, anthropologists, architects, historians, storytellers, linguists, geographers, and journalists who are working on Sindh's past and present. This conference has been conceived as a sequel to an earlier and very successful gathering with the same name organized 39 years ago, which generated a cultural archive as well as a cultural consciousness on scholarship of Sindh. Indeed, this conference has invoked both memory and nostalgia, as shown by the deep connection that the participants and organizers make to the earlier event. This time, it has been organized by an academic institution that has not only produced scholarship, but also leadership, both of Sindh and Pakistan, the Sindh Madressatul Islam. This makes the event even more significant as it seeks to involve students and is therefore likely to generate and promote practical interest in the study of Sindh. Sindh Madressatul Islam is not only a place of learning, it is a place of great historical value. It was set up in the spirit of the Aligarh School by Hassan Ali Effandi, grandfather of the former president Asif Ali Zardari. Its former students include the founder of this country, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and the present and the past chief ministers, many chief ministers of Sindh, and several other luminaries. I would like to take this opportunity to both thank and congratulate the organizers under the dynamic leadership of the Vice Chancellor Muhammad Ali Shaikh for his very impressive effort. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I listened with great interest the fascinating papers presented in this session titled Sindh, Belief and Myths. The enormously varied and wide-ranging material, ranging from belief systems of in the Indus seals, on ancient symbols such as the swastika, which presents both continuous and continuum between different religions and belief systems, on Sufi texts, traditions, and practices, on colonial contact and cultural translation and the production of knowledge, on epic literature such as the Mahabharata and representation of Sindh and Sindhu, on shrines and obscure geographies of spirituality. These all cover vast ground and provide insights into the cosmology of Sindh's belief systems. Belief systems, myths, and spiritual expressions are intangible cultural forms and indeed signifiers of art and artistic representation in relics, tombs, artifacts that are all part of the present landscape of Sindh and portray the dynamic interface and exchange between Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Muslim, Christian, and so many other belief systems. Sindh's cultural identity encompasses facets of these beliefs, and no religious idea excludes the other. Sufism in South Asia, and here in Sindh in particular, seems a conscious political and social effort to assert that Islamic belief does not exclude other beliefs but includes them, and rejects exclusion and promotes the eclectic spaces and religious ideas and practices. Unfortunately, the Pakistani textbook today emphasizes some chapters of our past while ignoring the others. And this alone entails the project of rewriting our past, and this conference has made a beginning by setting some records in order. In this conference, scholars have, repeatedly voiced the grave concern posed by development projects to the physical, cultural, and historical monuments of Sindh. But there is yet another threat that aims to seriously destabilize both physical and intangible aspects of our syncretic values and belief systems. The rich repertoire of Sindh's histories and interactive, interconnected belief systems is now, as the rest of Pakistan, threatened with a brand of belief that seeks to sever us from our past, from our plural history and culture, from our multi-layered identities, and establish a unitary, dogmatic, puritanical worldview that limits our past and present. While inclusiveness and plurality are the hallmark of Sufi belief, it is today pitted against another form of Islam, a purist New Age belief that has sustained guerrilla wars using the construct of jihad across the Muslim world. The mystic and religious shrines that have been discussed in at least two of the papers presented today have been a favorite target of the Pakistani archetypes of jihadi warriors, militants, or terrorists, whatever one may wish to call them. And I'm glad that Hinglaj is so far safe. As we know very well, Pakistan is deeply entangled in ideological warfare, where New Age jihad was made a construct through and within which foot soldiers were recruited, often with the consent and connivance of superpowers, to fight battles on borderlands, Pakistani borderlands, and in Afghanistan. The Pakistani state's own mythologies, created around its history, its security, and identity, has only complicated the situation. Today, the story is not just simply about the state versus the wild militant and the /terrorist and othering them. We now face an internal division, indeed a war between two worldviews, where one view often sympathizes with the narrative of war and violence, an extremist ideology, and the other opposed to it. Today, as we battle internally with the ideological remains of these wars, insurgencies, militancies, etc., the extremist beliefs threaten to shake up the Indus Valley's versatile and eclectic value system. And just as we are discussing Sindh's diversity of belief, obscurantists are using belief as a very tool of power to subjugate the other, which includes women, minorities, children, besides targeting service delivery officials like the doctors, the police, and the health workers. Threat and fear, coercion and vigilantism of these forces, often called non-state actors in the normative rhetoric, have created a new art of violence, powered by a belief system articulated in Islamic symbols. The religious warriors have reinvented rituals of violence and have used modern media, the camera, the radio, to convey a message of fear, seeking to silence dissent and resistance. The dangerous mix of belief, myth, and violence in the present-day Pakistan, and I refer obviously to the Talibanization, makes violence sacred, as in the case of the suicide bomber, often a teenager who imagines and is made to imagine a world of milk and honey awaiting him or her after the blast that kills, maims, and tears apart the intended target. These new beliefs asserted by violence are gaining dominance, and they seem to increasingly shape the way power works in Pakistan. The state's own position wavers between aggression and apology, and therefore one is never sure how the issue of militancy and the militant warrior is to be resolved in this country. Within this fractured space, what is interesting and gives me tremendous hope is that parallel to ritual and belief taken over by ideology of blood and violence are forms where social and indeed political world is fighting back to reclaim the space for peace. Earlier this year, a mega event called the Sindh Festival was organized by our young leader, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, in what he terms as a quest to reclaim the space ceded to the terror and warmongers. The Sindh Festival's provocative logo, the super sign, is a mix of both the Superman and the Sindhi sign, and it inverts the mighty moral power of the Superman and of the Sindhi Zamindar and incorporates it into the soft power of culture. The punchline of the festival called it a cultural coup, and by these terms it sought to assert an alternative power to the violent and extremist one that the militant asserts. This mega event was followed by similar festivals in the Punjab and more recently Balochistan. These culture wars, as writer Beena Shah calls them in a recent op-ed, are extremely popular, competitive, and inventive. In the Punjab, for instance, odd world records of push-ups, pull-ups, large human-made national flags were created to be documented by the Guinness Book of World Records in a bid to be on top of it all, seeking again to show muscle through culture. Here, I would argue that cultural symbol and cultural action is the new counter-narrative in Pakistan and seeks to normalize, assert, and empower a world to combat the sacred narrative of the warrior, of danger, threat, violence, that has made everyday life in Pakistan extremely dangerous to live and to endure for the ordinary Pakistanis. Indeed, this is what makes this conference relevant to our life and times, and what makes its content, its philosophy, and indeed the event itself as much more than an exchange of ideas. It provides it with an alternate power and vests it with a narrative that contests the one that threatens our past and present in unimagined ways. That is why all of you, delegates, scholars, organizers, participants, students, are not just here to present papers, you are also cultural warriors in the present context, and this conference an assertion of the past to reclaim our present. With these words, I wish all of you the best and do hope that the useful and insightful studies here will be edited into another volume so as to provide a context for a third Sindh Through Centuries conference at a later date. Thank you.